Ever feel like everyone's playing chess and you're stuck with checkers?
Oh, I know that feeling.
Like you're always a few steps behind. Well,
Yeah.
today, we're throwing out the rule book.
Okay.
We are diving deep into the world of power dynamics with the 48 laws of power.
Ooh.
We're going to unpack all the strategies, all the moves
Oh,
that
yeah.
have been at play for centuries,
Okay.
and arm you with the knowledge to level up your own game.
I like it.
And to help us with this, we've got Expert's Name back with us. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be back.
So the 48 Laws of Power, it's a controversial one.
It is.
It's got this reputation for being, well, kind of ruthless.
Can be, yeah.
But we're not here to turn you into, like, a Machiavellian schemer or anything. Think of it more like learning a new language, the language of power.
I like that.
Because once you understand it,
Yeah.
you can navigate any room, any situation with so much more confidence.
Absolutely. Being able to read the room, so to speak, and understand the power dynamics at play is invaluable no matter what field you're in.
Exactly. So to kick things off, let's talk about Cesare Borgia.
Okay.
This guy was a cunning Italian prince. But here's the thing. He was threatened by anyone, and I mean anyone who he thought might outshine him, even just a little bit.
Wow.
So he decides to eliminate his competition, right? A young, charming guy named Astor Manfredi.
Okay.
But here's where it gets interesting.
What's that?
Instead of just, being direct about it, Borgia showers this guy, Manfredi, with generosity, acting like his best buddy,
All right.
all while secretly orchestrating his downfall.
Oh, wow. The classic wolf in sheep's clothing?
Exactly. Have you ever experienced anything like that, where someone you thought was on your side
Right.
was secretly working against you the whole time?
It's more common than you might think. History and our everyday lives are full of stories like that. And that's where Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power comes in. It's almost like a guidebook to understanding these timeless power dynamics, these strategies that have been employed for centuries.
It's like he decoded the matrix of power.
Exactly. Greene didn't just chronicle these stories, he dissected them.
Okay.
He dug deep into the lives of powerful figures, not just the obvious ones like kings and queens, but also artists, seductresses, even criminals,
Interesting.
to understand how they amass power and influence. And he extracted these underlying principles, these 48 laws.
So it's not just about, being manipulative or cunning.
Not at all.
There's a deeper level of, like, social strategy at play here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's about understanding the often unspoken rules that govern human behavior, especially in the context of power dynamics, and recognizing that these laws, while drawn from history, are very much alive and well in our everyday lives.
So we're talking workplaces, relationships,
Oh, absolutely.
even online interactions. It's like everywhere you look, these power dynamics are playing out.
Precisely. Once you start to recognize these patterns, you see them everywhere. It's like a whole new layer of understanding human interaction has been unlocked. And the question becomes, once you see these laws at play, how do you want to navigate them?
Okay, so where do we even begin with this? Greene lays out 48 laws. Do we need to memorize all of them?
Well, it wouldn't hurt. But for our purposes, we've curated a selection. Laws that come up time and time again in today's world, whether we're talking about career advancement, personal relationships, or just understanding how to navigate the complexities of social situations.
So a greatest hits of power plays, essentially. I'm into it. Hit me with your first pick.
All right, let's start with Law 3. Conceal your intentions. I have a feeling this one might resonate.
No, a little mystery never hurt anyone, right?
Exactly. But this goes beyond just playing your cards close to your chest. Greene argues that as humans, we're hardwired to trust appearances. To constantly question everything and everyone around us would be exhausting.
That's true.
So we take shortcuts. We make assumptions based on what we see, what we hear, how people present themselves, and master manipulators, they exploit this.
Oh, okay. So how do they use this to their advantage?
Think of it like a magician, right? They use decoys, distractions, misdirection to keep you focused on one thing while they're doing something completely different.
Okay, so it's about keeping people guessing.
In a way, yes. It's about being strategic with what you reveal and what you keep hidden. It's about creating a smokescreen, if you will, that obscures your true motives.
Give me a historical example here. Who really mastered this whole conceal your intentions thing?
One of the best examples is Otto von Bismarck, the Prussian statesman who essentially orchestrated the unification of Germany.
Right.
Now, in the 1850s, war with Austria seemed inevitable. Everyone, and I mean everyone, expected Prussia to come out swinging, to take a hawkish stand.
Because Bismarck was all about blood and iron, right?
Exactly. But instead of fueling the fire, he does something completely unexpected. He delivers this impassioned speech in Parliament advocating for peace.
Wait, really? That doesn't sound like the Bismarck I read about in history books.
And that's the genius of it. He knew exactly how to play the game. See, Prussia wasn't actually ready for war at that point. They
Yeah.
needed time to build up their military strength. So he played the peacemaker.
It was all a strategic maneuver. Wow.
Precisely. And it worked like a charm. Not only did he buy Prussia valuable time, but he also strengthened his position with the king, who genuinely desired peace. It was a win-win for Bismarck.
He managed to achieve his goals by projecting an image that was completely at odds with his true intentions. That's incredible. It makes you wonder, are there times when playing the long game, even if it means concealing our true motives for a while, might actually be the most effective path to success? Whether it's a career goal we're working towards or a personal dream we're afraid to share, is there something to be said for strategic patience?
It's definitely something to ponder, and it highlights a key aspect of this law. It's not just about deception, it's about self-discipline. You have to be willing to resist the urge to brag, to show your hand too early. It's about mastering your impulses in service of a larger goal.
It's like resisting that urge to post a spoiler alert before everyone's seen the movie. It takes real restraint.
Exactly. And speaking of restraint, our next law dives into the often overlooked power of silence. Law 4. Always say less than necessary.
Less is more, huh?
Sometimes silence speaks volumes.
I like that. It's like you create this aura of mystery around yourself. People don't know what you're thinking,
Right.
so they start filling in the blanks themselves.
Precisely. And you know what? They often end up assuming you're far more powerful and insightful than you might actually be, simply because you're not revealing everything.
It's like we were saying with Bismarck sometimes, a carefully crafted image, or in this case, a lack of one, can be more effective than 1,000 words.
Absolutely. And it makes
Sure.
you seem more intriguing. People are naturally drawn to those who hold back a little, who don't feel the need to constantly prove themselves.
Okay, so who really embodied this law? Give me a historical heavyweight who truly understood the power of silence.
Look no further than Louis XIV, the Sun King himself. Talk about a master of calculated silence.
I'm listening.
According to courtiers at the time, Louis rarely spoke in public. And when he did, every word was carefully considered, measured.
It makes sense. It plays into that whole air of majesty and mystery that surrounds a king.
Yeah.
But let's bring this into the 21st century.
Okay.
Say you're in a job interview.
Right.
Are you supposed to just, sit there silently and stare at the hiring manager?
Well, not exactly. This law isn't about becoming a mime.
Okay, good to know.
It's about recognizing that silence, when used strategically, can be incredibly powerful. Think of it this way. Every time you speak, you reveal something about yourself. But you also have the opportunity to withhold information.
So silence is a power play.
Exactly. Imagine you're in a negotiation. Sometimes the best thing you can do is say your piece and then stop talking. Let the other person fill the silence. You'd be amazed what people will reveal or concede when they're uncomfortable with silence.
It's like they say, whoever speaks first loses, or something like that.
There's definitely some truth to that. It takes confidence to be comfortable with silence, especially in today's fast-paced world. But mastering that skill, it can give you a real edge.
I'm sensing a theme here. Concealing your intentions, mastering silence. It's like Greene is saying that self-mastery is the ultimate power move.
You're picking up what he's putting down. So much of power dynamics comes down to self-control, discipline. It's about choosing your battles, knowing when to speak up and when to hold back.
It's not always about being the loudest voice in the room, but rather the most strategic one.
Precisely. And speaking of strategy, our next law dives into the often overlooked power of letting your actions do the talking. Law 9. Win through your actions, never through argument.
Oh, tell me about it. I've had some lively debates online that could have won a war of attrition. You get sucked into these endless back and forths, and it's like, what's the point?
It's easy to fall into that trap, especially in today's hyper-connected world. But Greene reminds us that true power lies in action, not argumentation. He illustrates this brilliantly with a story of a Roman engineer who was tasked with building a war machine for a Roman consul, right?
I think I remember this one. Didn't it not end well for the engineer?
Let's just say he learned a hard lesson that day. So the soldiers warned this engineer, listen, this consul, he's not one to be questioned.
Good advice.
Right, but this engineer, he was absolutely convinced of his own brilliance. So what does he do? He ignores the warnings and insists on using a smaller mast for the war machine than the consul had specified. He was convinced he could argue his way to the top.
Yeah.
Prove the consul wrong with logic and reason.
Yeah.
Well, didn't quite work out that way. The consul, as you can imagine, was not impressed.
Yeah, probably not the best career move for the engineer.
It's a harsh reminder that no one likes to be told they're wrong, especially not by someone they perceive as being beneath them in the hierarchy. Pride and ego, they're powerful motivators.
So what's the takeaway here? If we can't argue our way to the top, how do we win?
By focusing on tangible results, let your work speak for itself. Actions speak louder than words.
Right.
Don't waste your time and energy trying to convince people with eloquent arguments. Show them what you're capable of. Prove your worth through your actions, your accomplishments.
It's a good philosophy for life in general, I think.
Absolutely. Pick your battles wisely. Sometimes the best way to win an argument is to simply refuse to engage in it in the first place. Let your actions be your statement.
I like it. So we've talked about concealing intentions, mastering silence, and letting actions speak louder than words. But there's another element to power that we haven't really touched on yet, and it's this idea of unpredictability. Greene talks about this in Law 17. Keep others in suspended terror. Cultivate an air of unpredictability. Sounds a little intense, right?
It does, doesn't it? But this law, it's often misunderstood. We're not talking about becoming erratic or deliberately trying to intimidate people.
Okay, good. Because I don't think showing up to work tomorrow and randomly firing someone is going to win me any Boss of the Year award.
No, probably not the best approach. Strategic unpredictability, that's the key. Let me illustrate with a story. Picture this, you're Haile Selassie, Emperor of Ethiopia back in the early 20th century. You've got this powerful warlord, Ras Balcha, who's becoming a bit too ambitious for your liking. What do?
I don't know, challenge him to a duel?
Close, but instead of an outright confrontation, Selassie gets strategic. He throws this lavish banquet in Balcha's honor.
That doesn't sound very suspended terror-y. More like delicious diplomacy.
Exactly. And that's precisely how Selassie wanted to seem. He knew Balcha was suspicious, so he played into that. Allowed him to bring his bodyguards, treated him like the guest of honor, lulled him into a false sense of security.
While secretly plotting his demise.
You got it. Selassie had actually positioned his troops to intercept Balcha's men miles away from the banquet. Balcha walked right into a trap he never saw coming.
Wow, talk about a power move. But obviously, most of us aren't navigating military takeovers or anything like that. How does this law apply in more everyday situations?
It's about being less predictable, keeping people on their toes just enough so they don't take you for granted.
So I shouldn't let my coworkers know that I always bring donuts on Fridays. Keep them guessing.
Exactly. It's like, don't be afraid to mix things up a bit. Change your routine. Don't always be so readily available.
So it's less about keeping people in terror and more about cultivating an air of mystery, of keeping them guessing.
Exactly. The element of surprise can be a very powerful tool.
Okay, so we've got concealing our intentions, mastering silence, letting actions speak louder than words, and embracing strategic unpredictability. We're covering a lot of ground here. It seems like these laws, they're all about understanding the subtle ways that power dynamics influence our interactions. But Greene's book, it goes beyond just these individual strategies, doesn't it? He also talks about this idea of perception, of image building, and how those play into the larger game of power.
You're exactly right. It's not enough to simply possess power. You have to project it. It's almost like power is a performance in a way.
Ooh, I like that.
You have to embody it, project it in a way that others can see and, more importantly, believe.
So it's not enough to just have a powerful job title or a corner office.
Those things can help. But true power, the kind that influences and inspires, it goes deeper than that. It's about image, persona, the aura you cultivate around yourself.
Okay, so how do you go about crafting that image? Give me an example of someone who really nailed this.
Let's talk about Diane de Poitiers.
Okay.
She was the mistress of King Henri II of France.
Ooh, juicy.
Right. But here's the thing. She wasn't just any mistress. She had this incredible hold over the king, over the entire French court, really.
Because she mastered the art of power playing.
Exactly. She understood that symbols, images, they hold immense power.
Okay, so how did she use that to her advantage?
She strategically aligned herself with symbols of power and influence. For example, she adopted the colors black and white as her own.
Bold.
And she associated herself with the Roman goddess Diana, a figure known for both her chastity and her power.
So she was playing a very strategic game here, and it worked. She wasn't just the king's mistress. She was a power player in her own right.
Exactly. She understood that to influence people, you have to appeal to their emotions, their subconscious desires.
Speaking of subconscious desires, there's that great story about the Japanese tea master Sen no Rikyu and his stone lantern. Do you remember that one?
Oh, yes, that's a classic.
So his gardener, thinking he's doing the guy a favor, enlarges the windows of this lantern to let in more light, right?
Right. Seems harmless enough, right?
Yeah, but Rikyu is furious. Why such an extreme reaction to a simple act of, like, home improvement?
Because for Rikyū, it wasn't just about the lantern itself. It was about the symbolism, the aesthetic, the deeper meaning it held.
Right.
By altering the lantern, even with good intentions, the gardener disrupted that delicate balance.
So it's about understand that even the smallest details, the seemingly insignificant choices we make, can carry a lot of weight.
Absolutely. The way we dress, the way we decorate our homes, even the words we choose to use, they all contribute to the image we project to the world.
It's all part of the performance. But here's the thing. If power can be so easily manipulated through image and perception,
Right.
how do we avoid being, played? How do we see through the smoke and mirrors?
That's the million-dollar question. And I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, critical thinking.
Okay, so question everything, trust no one got it.
Well, not exactly. But it's about being aware that not all that glitters is gold. Just because someone has mastered the art of persuasion, the art of image building, doesn't necessarily mean they have our best interests at heart.
It's like these charismatic cult leaders, right?
Precisely. Or even certain politicians who rely on charm and rhetoric. But when you look closer, there's no real substance there.
It's style over substance. All flash, no cash.
Exactly. They've learned how to play the game, how to push people's buttons, but at the end of the day, it's all a facade.
So how do we avoid falling for it? How do we spot the manipulators, the BS artists, before it's too late?
It comes down to being vigilant, to questioning what we see and hear, especially when it comes to those who hold positions of power or influence.
Don't just take things at face value.
Exactly. Dig deeper, look for inconsistencies, and most importantly, trust your gut.
It's like Green is giving us this incredible toolkit, this secret decoder ring for understanding the world around us.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
He's pulling back the curtain on the often hidden dynamics that shape our lives. And once you see those dynamics at play, it's like you can never unsee them.
It changes everything. It makes you realize that knowledge truly is power, right? Because once you understand the rules of the game, you can choose how you want to play.
Exactly. You're no longer just reacting to the moves of others. You're making your own moves, strategically and intentionally.
We're not saying you should use this knowledge for evil, of course.
Right.
Hey, little strategic maneuvering never hurt anyone.
As long as it's done with integrity and a sense of ethics, I think it's all fair game.
And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the 48 Laws of Power. A huge thank you to Expert's Name for joining us today and for sharing your insights.
It's been my pleasure, always a pleasure to delve into these fascinating topics with you.
And to our listeners, remember, knowledge is only as powerful as the person wielding it. So use this newfound understanding wisely, navigate the world with intention, and as always, thanks for listening.